Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock today, Thursday, January 23rd, and you've joined us for our webinar, Applying for a Grant as an Eligible Entity. My name is Katie Creighton, and along with Dean Bruce, we are co-leads of NMDA's Healthy Soil Program. We welcome you to this morning's webinar. As part of the welcome, a little bit of housekeeping here, but first, to make sure you're properly welcomed, take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat if you like. If you'd like to note the eligible entity that you're here representing today, maybe it's an acequia, maybe it's a land grant, maybe you're here on behalf of your pueblo, a soil and water conservation district, or a local office of cooperative extension service. Please include that in the chat so we know who we're talking with and who's in the audience. Note whether your jurisdiction is heavier on the cropland side, on rangeland, possibly another land type. The housekeeping part is that during the presentation today, we ask you to stay on mute and to keep your video off. And that really helps us preserve the bandwidth for people who are in far-flung corners of the state and might be having weather issues today impacting their internet service. So we thank you for keeping your video off. Now, after the presentation this morning, we'll invite you to use that raise hand feature. It may be placed a little different on your tool panel as compared to the one I took a screenshot of here, but you'll use that feature. We'll invite you to unmute, and then you can pose your question out loud if it's one of those kind of nuanced questions that doesn't translate well in writing. So we offer to you that these slides that you'll be seeing this morning, plus a captioned recording of today's webinar, they'll be posted on the Healthy Soil Program website, specifically the eligible entity webpage, within the next couple of weeks. And if you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, we'll notify you through that newsletter when those tools are available to you. So the agenda for today is to offer you a quick overview of the grant application cycle. We'll save that for the end of today so that you can see where we are in the process and where you need to move forward from based on today. We'll offer you a quick refresher on who is eligible for funding as an eligible entity, what projects are eligible for funding, when and where those projects can happen, and importantly, we will step through how to apply for our grants following that step-by-step process that you might have already seen online. Of course, we'll save time at the end for questions and answers. And we're together for about the next 90 minutes. Certainly, we won't keep you that time if we don't have the questions and answers to help fill that time. So first things first, who is eligible to apply for NMDA's Healthy Soil Program grants? If you'll join me in really focusing on the left-hand side of the screen there, hopefully you're here as an eligible entity. Those are defined in state law as local governmental entities with proven land management capacity to support healthy soil. They include pueblos, tribes, and nations here in New Mexico, the state's acequias, the state's land grants, soil and water conservation districts across New Mexico, cooperative extension services I mentioned, and if you're part of another party that meets that definition of a local governmental entity with proven land management capacity to support healthy soil, we would entertain an application from you as well. The application period you can see launched last week, and it concludes March the 19th. So it's about 10 weeks that we offer for you to complete all of your application materials and get those submitted. Now, your awards you can apply for reach up to $100,000, but be mindful of these two things. That amount must include the mileage that you would seek reimbursement for in order to travel out to your project site or your project sites. That figure of $100,000 also includes the 15% administrative fee that an NMDA will pay to your eligible entity for the tasks associated with implementation of this project, especially on the office side and invoicing for reimbursement. If you happen to be here as a non-governmental party, you're referred to on the right-hand side of this slide. We refer collectively to our individuals, our businesses, our nonprofits as individual applicants. This webinar is not for you. Rather, you'll want to join us this afternoon at 3 o'clock Mountain Time for the webinar that is specific to those individuals, those businesses, those nonprofits that apply for Healthy Soil Program grants. You've got a different process that you'll need to follow in order to apply. So take a moment to make sure you're in the right webinar today. And if you happen to be an individual applicant, we invite you to learn more on our website and get registered for this afternoon's webinar at 3 o'clock. So next question, where can Healthy Soil Program funded projects happen? And Dean, I believe I'm turning it over to you at this point.
Good morning, everyone. I'll begin to take over as far as where these projects can happen. Basically anywhere in New Mexico, these projects can occur on any type of operation. This includes cropland, rangeland, irrigated pasture, forest land, orchards, vineyards, gardens, subsistence gardens, things of that nature. Anywhere where ag products are produced. But also there needs to be an existing relationship to the land. Either you as the eligible entity either own that land, you lease it, or you manage it on behalf of another. You must partner with the local landowners to perform the work on it if you don't own the land yourself. The eligible entity must have landowner permission to implement a soil health project on land that it does not own. Any projects that you as an eligible entity undertake, you either must own the land, lease it, manage it on another's behalf, but if you don't own it, you must have landowner permission to implement those projects. The projects can occur on any amount of land, so these projects can be measured in acres or square feet. Next slide, please. So when can these projects occur? So as we move to the next slide, this is going to be a major improvement that many of you that have participated or been aware of the Healthy Soil program in the past, this is a major improvement. These projects now can last up to about 15 months. They will start mid-July of this year, 2025, and they will end September 26th. You're going to have quite a bit of time. So as you begin to formulate a project, bear in mind that you're going to have a bit more time to complete these projects. And so they will start, like I said, about mid-July of this year, 2025, and they'll end the end of September 2026. You'll have plenty of time to implement a variety of projects. Next slide, please. So what types of projects are eligible? As we move to the next slide, this is one of those things that as you as an eligible entity begin brainstorming about what types of projects you want to implement, bear in mind that these are on the ground projects. They must involve at least one of the 5 soil health principles that are named in the Act. The first soil health principle is to keep soil covered. You may do this by planting a cover crop, leaving crop residue in the field to decompose, or implement a prescribed grazing system to maintain cover on rangeland. Soil health principle number 2 is to minimize disturbance on cropland and minimize external inputs. When we think about this, we want to minimize that tillage on cropland, minimizing farm inputs by applying the 4R strategy. Anything that reduces the amount of inputs you have to bring from off farm or off ranch, that fits under category number 2 as well. And then soil health principle number 3, maximize biodiversity. We want to try to grow different varieties of plants. We want to have the most diversity we can out there. We can do this by maybe rotating our crops, implementing a good crop rotation system, utilizing cover crops as well as cash crops to keep that biodiversity going. We also want to manage our grazing to promote rangeland diversity, and we do this by implementing a prescribed grazing system that will allow us to maintain that diversity of warm season grasses, cool season grasses, forbs, shrubs, things of that nature, and we do that by managing our grazing. Soil health principle number 4, maintaining a living root. We want to try to maintain a living root in the ground as long during the growing season as possible. So we can do this by growing long season crops. We can plant a cover crop following a short season crop. We can do that by managing our grazing to promote that optimum ratio of cool season grasses, warm season grasses, forbs, and shrubs that I mentioned a while ago. And then, of course, we want to integrate animals into land management. This could include not only grazing animals, but birds, beneficial insects, and keystone species such as earthworms. We can do this by planting pollinator habitat, grazing our crop residues, following a prescribed grazing plan, or implementing a bale grazing plan. And so, any of those sample projects that I mentioned, as long as they address at least one of the soil health principles and they result in an on the ground project, it will be considered for funding. Next slide, please. Here are some of the sample projects that we have funded on cropland. You'll see in the top left-hand corner, they are seeding a crop, likely a cover crop out there. We see in the middle there on the top, planting a diverse cover crop mix. Again, another picture of planting a diverse cover crop mix. Pollinator habitat on the bottom left. But also, as eligible entities, you can host an educational event. And so you can host educational events as long as your project also includes an on the ground component. You could apply biochar to cropland and biochar compost. Other soil amendments on cropland will be considered for funding as an eligible entity project. Next slide, please. Moving on to the rangeland side, some of the sample projects we've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen eligible entities help their producers implement an intensive grazing system. We've also seen there on the left-hand side where eligible entities are now implementing subsoiling to break up compaction layer, increase infiltration, and improve your forage base on rangeland. And then bottom right-hand corner, we see bale grazing to provide that organic matter for the land, improve the overall soil infiltration rates, things of that nature. These are just sample projects. But by no way they are every project that you could do on rangeland, but these are just sample projects that you as an eligible entity might look at implementing on the land that you manage or own. Next slide, please. Okay, so another way that you as an eligible entity can kind of see what some of the projects that have been done across the state. We now have an interactive map on the NMDA Healthy Soil Program webpage. This includes all projects from 2020 to 2024. You'll notice the red dots are the eligible entity type projects. So you can click on those dots once you get to the online map. Click on those dots. It'll give you kind of a summary of the project that have been completed by eligible entities. But then also you might want to look at some of the individual projects that we've funded in the past. Those are the turquoise dots there, and you can click on those and see what some of the individual applicant projects have been in the past. And so we encourage you to take a look at these projects just to see what projects are available, what have been funded, but also maybe give you an idea of what you may want to do in your own district or on land that you manage. And it's at this point I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Katie, and we'll continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Dean. All right. So next question, now that you're sufficiently backgrounded on the basics of the program, how does your eligible entity apply for a grant from NMDA's Healthy Soil Program? It's a simple answer that every little thing you will need lives online. So everything you'll need to apply as a local governmental entity, remember that's what qualifies you as an eligible entity. It lives on that eligible entity page of our website, and all we ask is that you follow steps 1 through 4 in the order that we prescribe them. So what we ask is, of those 4 steps, that if you haven't already tackled steps 1 and 2, you do that as soon as possible. So just a quick reflection of what lives online at our website, which we'll jump over to in just a moment. Step 1 is simply selecting the project site and also identifying the top soil health related resource concern or concerns there on that site or sites, depending on the nature of your project. From there, you're developing your project based on the land. So literally building your project from the ground up, not from your budget backwards. So we're building the project based on what the soil needs. And if you're curious for more information, maybe you were there with us and need a refresher, we hosted a webinar back November 7th, really covering steps 1 and 2, and a recording and the slides from that webinar live online at the eligible entity webpage. But today we'll be focused on steps 3 and 4, which of course come in sequence. So after you've tackled steps 1 and 2, you'll take on steps 3 and 4, working on that online application, and of course, finalizing and submitting it. So if you want to take a moment and grab your cell phone, we invite you to take a snap of this QR code, which is going to take you over to the same web page, the eligible entity web page, that Dean and I are going to comb through right now. So I'll give you just a beat if you want to pick up your phone and snap that QR code for later reference if you've not landed on that website before. And while you do that, I'll get us set up to bounce over to our web pages. Okay, Dean, I should be on the FY26 requirements for eligible entities. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll just walk you through a bit of prologue here that this is important context up top. I'll shrink my screen just a tad so you can see how things look. Other places you can visit certainly while you're on NMDA's website, but here when you land on this page, we offer the reminder of what qualifies as an eligible entity, the reminder of our deadline, March 19th at noon, and the important note that late, incomplete, and paper applications will not be accepted, meaning they won't be reviewed. So if you want your application reviewed, make sure it's on time, that it's complete, and of course it's submitted in this digital format. Chances are if you've got a question, we've heard it maybe in a previous cycle and we've addressed it in writing for you. So check out that FAQ as you encounter things that may cause you some questions to arise. And of course, we haven't addressed everything under the sun. You're always welcome to send us an email or pick up the phone and call us for further guidance. And we're happy to do that clear through the application deadline, clear up until that point. Of course, the sooner the better. You don't want to wait until the last minute and risk not getting your application submitted on time. Again, this is where we'll be posting today's slides and recording after those are available in a few weeks. And if you want to reflect back on the November 7th webinar, here are the ways to do that. If you've not already signed up for our weekly email, we encourage you to do that. You'll find the subscription form on our Healthy Soil Program homepage. You can also send us an email with the word subscribe in it. Here are the documents that you will need to submit as part of your application. So come here if you're not sure what all makes a complete application. We offer that little checklist here. And Dean, I'm open to turning it over to you if you'd like to walk us through the steps.
Thank you, Katie. As Katie mentioned, on November 7th, we kind of reviewed the first couple steps of the application process, but we'll go back through those real quickly this morning on steps 1 and 2. So, Katie, if you'll open up here in just a second, step 1. This is where you, as an eligible entity, will take a good hard look at the land that exists within your jurisdiction and determine the primary soil health related resource concern or concerns that you want to address with this project. And so that's where you take that local knowledge, whether it be a district or a land grant, an acequia, you take that local knowledge of the land and you determine what you want to focus on. What are the primary resource concerns that may exist? It could be wind erosion. It could be degraded plant condition on rangeland. That's where that local knowledge, you as a land management entity, that's where you provide that local knowledge and determine where you want to focus. So this could include the land with the greatest potential for soil health improvement, the number of local land managers that may be benefited or impacted through your project, the plant communities and animal populations that would be benefited, the visibility of the project to other local land managers, as well as the public, students, and things like that. So you may want to take that into consideration when you're determining your project, as well as the proximity of the project site to where you as the eligible entity are headquartered. This makes it easier to access the site, things of that nature, so that you can be out there as much as possible to monitor the progress of the project. So once you have identified those soil health related resource concerns, we do encourage you to also visit with USDA NRCS to maybe get some ideas on how you could address those soil health related resource concerns that your project wants to focus on. And so that's one of the primary things that you as an eligible entity will do, is determine that focus. What do you want to focus on? And then you can begin to tie that into the soil health principles. So we'll go to step 2 real quick. And step 2 is where you're actually going to develop your project. And so some of the things that you're going to do on this is you're going to determine which soil health related natural resource concerns will your project focus on. You'll see we have kind of some questions that you may want to ask yourself, and these are the questions I'm going over right now as you actually develop that project. Then you can also look at which soil health related principles will best address those resource concerns, and then determine what ag practices or conservation practices will best put those soil health principles into action. Also, you need to take into consideration those agricultural or conservation practices and when they can be implemented. As I mentioned earlier, these projects will now run between mid-July of 2025 until late September of 2026. And so, as you're starting to develop your project, take into consideration that there is an increased time span, but at the same time, you want to understand that sometimes those time spans, if they're longer, we tend to procrastinate a little bit. So, really think about when you can implement those projects and what time of year those projects are best implemented in. Are they a fall project, a spring project, a summer project, things like that. But then you also need to look at what goods and services are needed to implement those practices. So this is where you begin to start developing your budget. And then you need to start thinking about from which companies you're going to source those goods. So where are you going to actually purchase those products that you need to implement? And then determine the actual cost of the goods and services that you're looking to purchase. So all of those are things to think in mind as you're developing your project. And I think while we're here real quick, we won't dive too deep into this document, but this year you'll see that Katie is hovering over the FY26 project development guidance document. And so if she can, I'll have her open that up real quick. So what we did this year is we put this document together to help both individual applicants and eligible entities develop their project. And it has a lot of resources in it. You'll see it kind of has this graphic on the beginning to kind of give you an overall gist of where you are in the project. I'll go ahead and let Katie scroll down just a little bit so that we can kind of get to the meat of the document. It tells you, of course, step 1, how to use this document. This document can be used by both individual applicants and eligible entities. It helps you select those practices based on the resource concerns that you've identified. And so we'll go ahead and scroll down just a little bit more. We've also included in this document a proven practice chart. It's at the very bottom of the document, and it'll help kind of give you a list of some of the proven practices to improve soil health. As we keep scrolling through the document, some of the stuff you're going to see is familiar. These resource concern guide sheets that we're fixing to come up on. These have been available in the past. We just put it all in one document so that as you're developing your project, you can print this one document off and have it as a resource to use as you're developing your project. So we have a resource concern guide sheet for cropland. We've had this in the past. And so again, I encourage you to look at this as you're developing your project, because what this specific document does is it ties the resource concerns to the ag practices to the soil health principles, and so makes that connection between those 5 soil health principles that are the backbone of the program. You'll see them listed out right there in the top of the document. So it takes those 5 soil health principles and it ties those back to not only the conservation practices that you may use, but also the resource concerns that you've identified during your planning process as an eligible entity. So we'll scroll down just a little bit to the rangeland resource concern guide sheet. Um, very similar to the cropland resource concern guide sheet. Same basic information. We have the soil health principles listed at tops for your reference. And then also we have the resource concerns that you may identify as a local land management entity. And then the agricultural or conservation practices that you may use to improve those specific resource concerns. You'll notice I didn't mention this earlier, but in blue there, the three-digit codes in blue, they correspond to the NRCS practice code for each of those practices, so that as you're doing research on how to best implement these specific practices, you can click on those practice codes, and it will take you to a wealth of information at the NRCS New Mexico specific website to where you can research how to best implement some of these conservation practices. So then as we continue scrolling through the rangeland guide sheet, we now come to the proven practice chart. And this is something that was newly developed this year for individuals and eligible entities to utilize. But these are the types of practices that have been proven time and time again to actually improve soil health on the lands. And so we have a practice listed. We have applicable land use. You can utilize that practice on. And then also we have some other information such as the associated non-durable goods that you may need to purchase to implement that practice. We also have associated durable goods that you may need to purchase to implement that practice. And then any associated facilitating services. So is there another type of service that is needed to implement this practice beyond just purchasing the cover crop seed and having a no-till drill available for implementing that? And so we've tried to cover as much information as possible. And then also the last column you'll see there is any special considerations to implementing that practice. You'll note that on a cover crop, we'll just go this for an example. If you as an applicant for an eligible entity type project have a cover crop seeding rate that is greater than NRCS recommended rates, you'll need to justify, why do you in that specific area think that the seeding rate needs to be higher? And so we've put together this document. We hope that you'll definitely print it off, have it available during any of your planning sessions as you're looking at developing your project. And so we really feel that this document, along with the FAQ document that we've put together, will really help you put together a quality project that's going to really impact soil health in your jurisdiction.
Tina, and I'll
So I
add
think,
just a
go
piece of
ahead.
context. Excuse me for interrupting. I'd like to just add a piece of context that as you review these proven practices, we're really talking about practices here, not expenses. The reason I want to make that distinction is because if we suggest to you, hey, if you're going to do this practice, it's recommended that you have access to a no-till drill or planter, that doesn't mean NMDA is going to buy that for you. Okay, so you'll want to refer to our FAQs and our eligible versus ineligible expenses. We've got a $5,000 cap on our durable goods purchases. So keep in mind that important context about what we will and will not fund. This is simply to remind you of the things that you will need in some form or fashion in order to implement these proven practices.
Thank you for that great additional information there, Katie. I think at this point we'll go back to the website to go through the remaining steps of project development. So again, steps 1 and 2, that's where you start developing your project. And then as we move to step 3, this is where you'll actually work on the online application. And one of the critical components of the online application is the all-important budget and timeline template. So that's something that you'll need to download off of the website. And this is where you start Once you've identified those resource concerns and identified those goods and services that you're going to need to utilize to put together a project, this is where you'll actually start putting everything onto paper in a timely manner. You'll see here in just a second, we're going to pull up a sample of the budget and timeline so that you can see, kind of how to fill it out and go from there. So the first thing you're going to need to do, and I don't know if Katie's going to show you an example of this, but you'll actually have to download this Excel spreadsheet onto your own computer.
Sure, we can do that right quick. Okay, so what it's doing is it's actually downloading the template. That's good. If it takes you to an online place to work on the template, you want to save it to your computer because, again, you're customizing this template to your project. So make sure it's saved to your computer where you can put in those specific costs of goods and services associated with your project. So, Dean, I could certainly open the example, or I could just pop over to the one that we've mocked up for the group.
I think the best thing now is go ahead and just open up the one that we've created as an example
Okay.
for eligible entities. And what we've done for you, as Katie's getting that pulled up, is we didn't create an entire budget for you, but we want to kind of go over the template, how it functions, and how to properly fill out the template. And the first thing you're going to want to do is go to that first tab there on the bottom for the directions. And do not skip the directions on this because it really explains to you how to fill this out and the things that you need to be aware of as you're filling it out. And so as you go through here, please don't skip the directions to fill out the budget timeline template. Um,
And Dean, if
so
I could just
go ahead.
underscore something, this is a new bit of directions here as we've adjusted the template, and we'll show that to you in just a moment. But we're actually building into that template your breakdown of a cover crop species. So if that's part of your project, you'll want to make sure that you take special note of that piece of the template and that you complete it appropriately.
So we'll go ahead and we'll look at the actual template that you will fill out itself here in just a second. So you'll notice there on the very top of it in the center, you'll see this is for the eligible entity budgets. And so if you pull up one that says individual applicants and you're applying as an eligible entity, you'll know that you're on the wrong one. And so to go back to the website and search for that one for the eligible entities. And so you as an eligible entity, as you're starting to put together everything, you'll notice we have this broken down into the three different categories of purchases. The first category is your non-durable goods. These are things such as cover crop seed, compost, mulch, things of that nature that are short-lived and that you'll purchase and utilize within the grant period itself. The next broad category of purchases is the durable goods, and these are things that are long-lived, such as PVC pipe, T-posts for a fence, livestock drinkers, things of that nature, something that you can kind of that are going to last for an extended period of time. And then your third broad category of purchases that you can be reimbursed for are your services. These are specialized work that are performed by a business, such as soil testing in a lab, no-till drilling, things of that nature that you're going to actually contract out to somebody to perform a specific service. Um, Please note on services that we do have a 10% cap of total project funds for consultants. That's very important to understand. We do understand that at times you need to hire a consultant, but we will only allow up to 10% of the total project funds to be allocated to a consultant. So moving back to actually filling out the template itself, over here on the left-hand side, this is going to be the timeline of your project activities. And so understanding that you do have an extended timeline, this is going to start with your first quarter, which will be July through October of 2025. The second quarter will be November of 25 to February of 26. The third quarter will be March of 26 to May of 26. And the final and fourth quarter, where you can do project activities, will be June 2026 through September 2026. So, again, you need to determine what practices you can complete in that timeline and when they are best completed. The very, very first thing you're going to do as you fill out this template is determine the number of baseline soil samples that you're going to need to take. Okay, these soil samples are a service that will be completed in a lab, but that is the very first thing that you as an eligible entity need to determine is the number of soil samples. So each separate land unit that you're going to be working on, if say you're working on 15 different land units, you will put 15 soil tests in there. Now, if there's a reason to have additional soil tests per land unit, just justify that as part of your application. But so what you're going to do, as Katie has highlighted there, the first thing is lab-based soil testing. We've already provided that for you, and that helps you along in the process. But then you're going to need to determine the name of the company, the business that you're going to utilize to perform those lab-based soil tests and provide that in that box. So that could be, XYZ Soil Lab, as an example, but you're going to provide us with the specific name of the company. And then you're going to provide us the number of soil samples that you foresee needed to be taken based on your project. So for this example, we're going to take 15 soil tests. You'll notice in that next column, we do want the unit of measure. And so for this one, it's soil tests. So you enter the number of the units, the type of unit, and then you're going to have to do a little bit of research to determine what each of those soil tests is going to cost you. And so for this example, I put in $62.50, and then it calculates that for you. There is no need for you to break out the calculator. It's going to do that work for you. And so once you've got past that point, then you can actually start working on the other specifics of your budget. But please do the soil testing first to get those baseline soil tests out of the way. So the next thing you're going to do is determine when you're going to do the various components of your project. You'll notice there's a drop down. You can select first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or fourth quarter. And so determine when you're going to implement those practices. So for this first example, we're going to do it in the first quarter, which is going to be July through October. I'm calling that a fall cover crop mix. So we're going to drill a fall cover crop mix. And so we actually have a couple different examples here of how to fill this out. And I'm going to explain the difference because as you can see on your screen, we have two examples of the first quarter where we're going to drill a fall cover crop mix. And the first example there, I have fall cover crop mix, and then I have the species listed. I have the total number of pounds that we're going to purchase, which is 62.5. You'll put that, you'll put the pounds. Please note, if Katie will scroll up just a little bit so that we can see the instructions on this tab. Do not use vague measurements like bags or I guess for cover crop seed, it would mostly be bags, but you'll notice we want to be as specific as possible. So please use pounds, tons, things of that nature that are specific and measurable. And so we discourage the use of anything other than pounds or things like that. So you'll notice on this first one, I have a fall cover crop mix. I have the different species listed. I have the number of pounds that we're going to purchase. I have the unit of measurement is pounds, and then through your research as an eligible entity, you've decided that this is going to cost $1.50 a pound. Certainly aware that this is not probably an accurate amount, but I was putting this together just as an example so that you can see the best way to present this information on your budget. So we have a fall cover crop mix here with the different species listed. I'm going to let Katie scroll all the way to the right. because this is where that new portion of our budget template resides. And this is where you're actually going to put the specific seed mix. The intended seeding date is the first column, so that's going to be, your fall cover crop mix. The next column is the mix or the species name. And so some of you may be ordering a specific mix from a seed company, and that's okay. Put that specific mix. You're going to list the field or pasture that you're going to be implementing this on. And then also, we do still encourage you to utilize your local NRCS office to see a recommended seeding rate, what they recommend for that. And then also the acres seeded and the pounds of seed needed. And so this will help you calculate that. Unfortunately, I did not fill this one out for this example, but we do require that you use this if you're implementing a cover crop. So we'll scroll all the way back to the left. And then we're going to go scroll down just a little bit more to the next example. And this is probably not the best way to present a cover crop mix. And I'll tell you why. So in this example, I broke it out to each individual species that we're going to purchase, the number of pounds that we're going to purchase of that species, and the cost. Well, I didn't put a cost per pound. The reason this may not be the most effective way to put this on your budget is because if a particular species is not available, or the price of a specific species goes up or down, that would require a budget adjustment. However, in the previous example that I showed you, if you're going to implement that species as a whole, or that mix as a whole, you'll see Katie highlighted that one right there. If for some reason, let's say that your tillage radish is not available and you need to do a substitution, you can call us, email us at NMDA with the Healthy Soil Program and say, look, we're not able to find this species, and we can make a simple substitution without doing a formal budget adjustment. So, again, I encourage you, if you're going to implement this entire mix as a package, do it using the first example here versus the second, because the second one may require a budget adjustment if some of the species change, the prices change, and things like that. So I would discourage you from listing out each specific species and the price per pound of that species, especially if you're going to implement it as an entire mix. This may make a little bit more sense on the next example. And so for the next example, in the second quarter, we're going to build an electric fence to help manage livestock grazing. And so you can see on this, because we're actually building a fence, we're going to have to purchase fencing materials. That will be listed in the durable goods column. And so durable goods, again, are any of those things such as PVC pipe, T-post, wire, insulators, fence charger, things of that nature that are a durable good. So we're going to implement this in the second quarter. And the way I have it listed out here is electric fence with the components listed below. So you see that we have an electric fence, we have a charger, insulators, post, wire, gate handles, and we're going to install 150 linear feet of this electric fence, and it's going to cost you $3.50 a foot. Okay, versus the example below. And again, this is where you would list it out by each individual item. And the only reason we discourage this is because if for some reason the cost of your insulators went way up and the cost of your gate handles went way down, you would have to end up doing a formal budget adjustment. However, the previous example where you purchase all the individual items together for one unit to be installed of 150 feet, you would not need to do a formal budget adjustment if some of those individual items changed cost. And so I know this is probably going to spur on quite a few questions, and that's okay, but this is the portion of your application that you need to spend the most time on. So we're going to move over to the services category. And there's a few things we want to encourage you to do on the services category. We've already mentioned that on the soil test, you need to identify the specific business or company that will be performing it. We also want you to do the same thing if you're having to hire a contractor to perform no-till drilling of that fall cover crop mix. So you notice we listed no-till drilling, fall cover crop mix, and we've identified that specific contractor. In this example, it's D&J Custom Farming. And so we've identified that specific contractor or business that will be performing it. For this example, I just put the units as 1.5 acres. So you identify that unit of measure as well as the total units, and then the cost per unit is $15. And again, this tabulates it for you. There's no reason, and we highly discourage you to try to manipulate any of the formulas because it will calculate it for you. So we have some examples of both non-durable goods, durable goods, and services that you may put into your budget. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom, and there's one final thing that you're going to need to complete, and that's the mileage. And so this is the last thing that you'll fill out as an eligible entity, and this is the mileage that you're going to complete in going back and forth from the project site. And so you need to determine the potential number of project sites that you're going to have, and determine that one-way mileage from your eligible entity headquarters or your office to that project site, and put that mileage total in here. So for this example, let's just put 15 miles in there. If you could, Katie, and you'll see that it automatically populates a mileage reimbursement of $19.65. Okay, so we encourage you to determine that mileage between your office and the project site. And there may be multiple sites, and so you need to take that into consideration as well and calculate that as part of your total. I know I went through that very, very quickly, and I'm sure there's going to be questions, but we do encourage those questions at the end of the presentation. So we're going to go back to that website to continue on with the application process, unless Katie has anything else to bring in at this point.
Good to go. I think those were good real life examples, and really appreciate the specificity of your descriptions so that it's very clear to the reviewers. It's very clear to the Healthy Soil Program team what's going to be done when, where, and how. What are the specific costs, the specific services, the specific goods you need to implement your project. The more specificity, the better. So make sure to take those good details as you're doing your research on what all your project will require.
So moving on to the fourth and final step for you as an eligible entity, you're going to go to step 4, and this is where you're actually going to finalize and submit your online application. And so it's at this point, I'm going to go ahead and let Katie take over and guide you through the online application portal.
Sure, thank you, Dean. So you can see it's loading here. I already had it preloaded over here, so let me close one of those tabs. This is where you'll land. Maybe you've already started an account, but this is the page you'll land on that all of NMDA uses. So you want to make sure you're reading through carefully to make sure you're actually applying for the right opportunity here. Okay, create a free submittable account. This is a third-party website to our own, but this is our account. So go ahead and set yourself up with an email address and a password. Know that you can save a draft. You don't have to complete all this work at once. So bite it off in chunks, study the questions we have posed there, chew on your potential responses. You can come back and save a draft so long as it is submitted by our deadline of noon on March 19th. Again, we won't accept late, incomplete, or paper applications. And you have the opportunity to edit your submission. So if you accidentally press send, you go, oh, I forgot to include such and such. No problem. You'll request to edit that submission. We require that if you edit your application, that you make sure to submit it by the deadline still. The deadline will still apply to you, even if you pull it back for edits. A little note here about the internet browsers that best support Submittable. You'll want to read and make sure that before you upload documents that they fit the file types we're calling for. If we're calling for an Excel spreadsheet, that's the version you need to upload, not a Google document reflecting your Excel template, but rather that Excel format in its original form. And you've got some help here with navigating this particular website. As I said, we have some other NMDA activities posted here. What you'll want to do is scroll down for eligible entities. Check out those guidelines, make sure they agree with your understanding of things. So we offer here a reminder of the project timeline, that mid-July date to end of September 2026. We remind potential applicants what constitutes an eligible entity, and we invite you to return to the website if you just happen to get here via a link that someone forwards to you. I'm going to go ahead and press submit. And it's going to require me to log in. So I've already established an account. But of course, if you don't have one, you'll just need to sign up for starters. Okay, I'm going to input my password. Dean, we should be on the landing page for Healthy Soil Program grants for eligible entities. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, you are there.
Okay, great. All right, so again, we offer that bit of background just to make sure you're on the right application. And then you're ready to dive in. So you want to answer these few questions first. Are you applying for a grant on behalf of an eligible entity? If you meet that local governmental entity with proven land management capacity to support healthy soil, it's a lengthy definition, but provided you meet it, you're ready to click yes and apply. We offer you that reminder of what constitutes an eligible entity. And here begin the questions. So you'll notice we ask you about the land first. Where are you located? Do you have physical address or coordinates to help us understand where the project is happening? The amount of land where the project will occur. Okay, this is a really important reminder. Let's say you're working on a community garden, maybe something you typically measure in square feet. We'll provide you tables throughout the remainder of the application to convert those square feet over to acres. And that way we're dealing apples to apples with all of our projects. We ask you about the eligible entity's relationship to the land, what land type the project will occur on. This is important, so don't skimp here. Take some pictures of your project site. If you've got maps, great. If you can notate where the boundaries are, where specific activities will occur, all the better for our reviewers to really visualize where the project's going to happen and what the project consists of. So make sure you're paying special attention to this prompt of uploading an image. We ask you about the primary market for the ag products produced on the land involved. And we'll get into some of the recent and more historic management aspects of the land where the project is proposed. So we'll ask you about current management practices. You'll provide some detail there. You'll notice that some of these questions we've placed word limits on, and that's out of respect for our reviewers' time. So you want to provide detail within those word limits. Now we get into a bit more about your eligible entity. Which of these categories do you best fit? Maybe you're none of the above. Maybe you're a conservancy district. You're applying on behalf of a conservancy district. So that is what type of information you'll supply as you declare yourself as another local governmental entity that doesn't fit any one of these categories above. This is really critical too. So we want to make sure that if you're applying for that full $100,000, inclusive of your mileage and your 15% administrative fee, if you're applying for that $100,000 cap, you've got to be registered with the federal government to do business. So you've got to have one of those UEIs, the Unique Entity Identifier. It's a mouthful, but if you've done business with the federal government and you've got an account set up through sam.gov, simply provide us that UEI number. So if you click yes, we're registered to do federal business, there you're prompted for that UEI. If you're not set up to do business with the federal government, we cap the funding limit for your project at $25,000, and you'll see that listed here. A bit more about the eligible entity. Basically, who are we going to maintain contact with throughout these nearly 15-month grants? And how will we stay in contact? Okay, we want to know if you've applied for the program before, if you've won a grant. We invite you to share with us if you serve producers who fit some of these unique community definitions provided within the Healthy Soil Act. Give your project a title. Let it be descriptive. And the reason we're looking for a short 10-word title here is because ultimately that will help us populate our projects map that Dean referenced earlier in the slides. You'll want to summarize your project touching on these topics: the amount of land, the land type, the resource concerns particular to your soil, and what practices you're implementing to address those concerns. Again, this is a short summary so that we can utilize that information to populate our map. You're addressing those resource concerns here, telling us which soil health principle you'll be applying, one or more, to qualify for our grant funding, of course. And then just alluding to what conservation practices, what agricultural practices you'll be putting to work on the land. Here's that table I mentioned earlier to help you convert from square feet to acres if you're listing your project in square feet. If you plan to do bale grazing, you'll be prompted to upload a bale grazing plan that has to be completed with help from the Natural Resources Conservation Service. If you're not completing bale grazing, no need to upload that plan, of course. And we know a lot of our eligible entities will build in an education and outreach component to their projects. You saw that picture at Taos SWCD where the room was full of people eager to learn about soil health. This is the place to describe those education, those outreach efforts. Tell us who your target audience is, what messages you're going to communicate to them, when during the grant term will those activities happen, and how are you reaching your audience? Notice that the project narrative is worth a full 20 points. You want to make sure that you're addressing within that narrative all of these prompts. Can you address other things? Absolutely. But make sure that at bare minimum, you're addressing these prompts with sufficient detail to give reviewers and the HSP team a good sense of your project. We've capped you at 500 words here. We ask that at a minimum, you provide 250 words. Dean mentioned the lab-based soil testing. It's a requirement right off the bat for all of the projects we fund. So tell us about your testing approach. What lab did you choose? How did you choose the sites you're going to sample those soil samples from? And how many sites do you have? So you'll wrap all of that information together in a brief response. But surely there are other evaluation techniques that you'll be putting to work here. So is it taking photos of the land and doing a comparison of those? Maybe you're measuring the forage on a piece of land and applying some of the soil health assessment techniques that we advise. So list those other evaluation techniques here below. What do you see as your project outcomes in terms of the agricultural impact, the economic impact, the social impact? Are there other impacts you anticipate? What are those? Describe those here. We just went over that timeline and budget template worth a full 40 of the 100 points. So you'll make sure to upload that in its original Excel format there. And just plug in the final dollar total that you're requesting funding for, inclusive of that mileage, inclusive of the 15% administrative fee. We remind you that we have an FAQ to help decipher some of those eligible versus ineligible expenses and also to address other questions. Make sure you're referring to that before you press submit by the deadline. And we invite, if you've got other supporting documents, maybe local land managers have, written a brief letter to you expressing interest in your project. That would be a great supporting document. We'll limit you to just 5 of those so that we're respectful of our reviewers' time. Okay, and here at the last is something that you saw some great photos in our presentation today. Many of those were retrieved from reports that were provided by our grantees. So here you're simply acknowledging that NMDA may publish some of those materials that you supply as part of your grant and reporting on your grant. And a few final attestations here, they call them. just verifying that you understand the time frame, that our grants are competitive, that we have a review process that culminates with Secretary Whitty's final decision making, that will pay grant funds on a reimbursement basis, just paying you as you reimburse us, so you don't have to wait till the full end and incur all those costs before you reimburse us, that you recognize the time frame of things. So we've got a mandatory virtual training coming up on June 24th for those whose projects are selected for funding. Pretty simple. And again, you can save your draft, come back and work on it later, or you can hit submit when you're ready and call it back for edits. We don't recommend that approach. We recommend double checking, triple checking before you ultimately press submit by the deadline. So now I'll take us back to our PowerPoint and just remind you that everything we just looked at, we looked at all of the steps of the application process. We looked at the online application. We looked at the budget template. All of that stuff lives in a one-stop shop. And the way to access that one-stop shop is right here on that QR code. So as we switch speakers back to Dean here, I'll just give a beat for people to snap that with their phone if you don't already have that bookmarked somewhere. Dean?
Okay, so just a kind of a broad overview of what we covered today, where we're at here as far as in the application cycle. Back in the fall, we did post quite a few of our application materials online so that you could get prepped for that. As Katie mentioned earlier, on November 7th, we hosted a webinar, a pre-application webinar to get everyone ready and prepped to complete steps 1 through 3. That information is still available on the website as well, so you can go back and take a look at that. January 15th, that's when the application actually launched online, so it is live right now. And then today, January 23rd, we have our application webinar to help you go over steps 3 through 4 of the application process. And you have roughly 2 months to complete the application and get it submitted by the deadline of March 19th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. That is noon. Please remember that. That is noon and not midnight. So the application is due at 12 p.m. noon Mountain Time, and that is a hard deadline. Late or incomplete applications will not be accepted. So please mark that on your calendars as a hard deadline, March 19th, 12 p.m. noon Mountain Time. Next slide, please.
And Dean, before we hit that next slide, I'm going to acknowledge one of my typos. This November 7th webinar focused on steps 1 and 2. So basically selecting your site and starting to develop those project ideas. So check out that webinar recording and those slides if you weren't able to join us back in November.
Okay, thank you. And as we finish up today, we just want to give you a few tips on putting your project together. We want to remind you to build your project based on what the soil needs. This is going to take a bit of planning, but you need to really identify those soil health related resource concerns, identify the practices that you're going to utilize, and then determine the cost. Okay. So again, we want to remind you, build your project on what the soil needs and also not what the eligible entity needs. Another helpful tip is to do not outsource your application. What we mean by this is grantees are expected to be intimately familiar with all aspects of their project. If you allow someone else to complete your application, you could set up your eligible entity for project failure by not understanding the full context of the application. And so we do encourage you as an eligible entity to own this application, to be familiar with all aspects of the project and how the project's going to be implemented and things of that nature. A few helpful reminders, again, deadline to submit your online application, including all of the related documents, is March 19th at 12 p.m. noon Mountain Time. Later incomplete paper applications will not be accepted for review. NMDA staff, the Healthy Soil Program team, is available to answer your questions up until the application deadline. So, any questions that you have related to the Healthy Soil Program, please let us be your first stop for those questions. We definitely are willing to help you. Um, we do recommend not waiting until the last minute. And we also have our email address provided here, hsp@nmda.nmsu.edu, for any questions. In addition to that, you can use that same email to contact me or Katie. I have made available my assistance to help you work through some of the technical portions of your project. So if you need help kind of developing your project from a technical standpoint, please shoot an email to that HSP email that I just mentioned and reference it to me. And I can definitely help any of these eligible entities try to get a project going on the ground. So, again, I offer that help until the project deadline. So, I think we'll move to the next slide. And this is just a little bit of contact information. Again, a reminder of the website that you're going to need to go to for all things Healthy Soil Program, our email address, as well as a telephone number if you need to call. And everything is collected at one spot, and then we distribute it to either Katie or myself, depending on where the question goes or what the assistance is. And so, again, there's another QR code for you that are tech savvy. You can snap on that, and it'll take you to our website. I guess at this point in time, we will kind of open it up for questions. We do have a few minutes available. We'll leave it on this screen for just a minute so you can write this stuff down and be able to contact us with any of your questions.
So Dean, I see we have about 15 minutes, maybe a touch more, and some good activity in the chat. So I'll trust that everyone has taken that screen grab of the QR code or of our website or phone number or email address, and we'll stop sharing here so we can interface with everyone here. All right. Dean, I know you've got your chat open. I'm looking at mine as well.
I think I'm pretty much caught up until this last question that came in. It says, what if a project is only educational? How does the lab testing apply? Or if a project is both educational and also makes cover crop seed available to community members, does everyone who takes cover crop seed need to do a lab test? What if we don't know how many people, what specific people will participate until the project begins? Okay, so the projects must include an on-the-ground component. And for that, you will have to take your best guess, do a little pre-application outreach to determine the potential participation in your project. And from that point, you will need to determine, how many soil tests are needed. But each participant that is participating in, say, a cover crop seed program will need to have a soil test completed as well as in-field assessments. But for the portion of the budget, you will need to estimate the number of soil tests that are going to be completed. Of course, as well as the amount of cover crop seed you're going to need. And so a lot of that goes into, really reaching out to potential project participants early and determining the size and scale of your project. I hope that answered your question.
It was a really solid one, so I offered a little bit of context there in writing that you're welcome to add on to there, Dean. I'll start up at the top from Rose Fernandez. Will we be getting a copy of the slides? And those will be posted on the same website that we spent a lot of time perusing this morning. So just make sure you've got that eligible entity webpage linked and bookmarked on your end so that you can visit that as needed. And you'll want to subscribe for our weekly emails, because when things get posted, when things are new, we make sure to let the readers of that weekly email know, hey, you need to go visit the website. We've got a new recording posted. We've got slides posted, whatever the case may be. Okay. Dean, a question from DeAndre at East Rio Arriba. We have multiple businesses we recommended to landowners. For example, soil sample labs. Do we list all businesses that we recommend? So I think she's thinking of that services column of the timeline and budget template. How do they declare the soil labs that they might be working with?
I think if it's just one or two soil labs that you're going to work with that you make a recommendation for, you could list them in the budget. Um, I would say, Katie, and I'll let you feel free to correct me if there's multiple businesses or contractors that you're going to utilize for the program. You could use your additional documentation documents that you're going to submit to maybe list all of those businesses that you may be utilizing. Thoughts on that, Katie?
That would be fine, and maybe even to save a step within that timeline budget template bracket for us, the labs that were recommended to producers, so that when ultimately we see that invoice to make reimbursement, we go, this checks out with what they proposed as part of their project. So I think either approach would be sufficient.
Yeah, I think if you can fit them on the budget template, please do so.
Mhm. Another good question from Navona, and I'm just voicing these out. I know you wrote responses here, Dean. I'm recognizing that there may be someone on their phone who can't keep up with the chat or can't see it in large enough font. So great question from Navona. What type of soil tests are required or permissible? For example, can someone do a biological microscope test as long as it fits the budget? Or does it need to be physical test or chemical? And if so, what are we testing for?
Again, another great question. The baseline soil testing that we do require at a minimum is a basic chemical analysis. Anything beyond that is allowable. We do need you to provide a justification as part of your application as to why you need those additional types of testing. But at a minimum, we do require a basic chemical analysis, and so beyond that. Other types of soil testing are allowable, but we just need that justification on why that specific soil test is needed.
Thank you, Dean. Ash Taylor at NNerd asks a good question. Is this recurring annual funding for a certain amount of time? So short answer, and Dean provided this in the chat, just voicing it out for people who might not have access to the chat. Yes, this is an annual program. So if for some reason you're thinking, gosh, I'm not sure I can get all this together in the next couple of months, you can always come back to us next year. And if you're doing a multi-phase project, one that will be implemented over the course of years, certainly we invite you to come back and make additional application, provided that next year's project advances from this year's project. We don't want to fund the same thing over and over in perpetuity. Another question from Navona. Does the NMDA see post-project testing as a valid expenditure, i.e. to see if amendments were successful in improving soil conditions?
Thanks for that great question. This year, due to the expanded timeline of the grant period, we are allowing post-project soil testing if you provide an adequate justification. The initial baseline soil test is required, but post-project soil testing to determine maybe the potential effects or whatever of your project, we are allowing that again with adequate justification within the budget or within the grant application itself.
And they'll want to make sure to build in a corresponding line item within that timeline and budget template. Of course, we've already built in the pre-project soil test. That's a requirement. If you elect to do additional post-project testing, make sure that's reflected in both your application and your budget template. Dean, I see we have about 10 more minutes. We're all caught up on the chat. Maybe someone's got a burning question that doesn't translate well in writing and they want to voice it. We're open to hearing your question out loud. Just ask for permission to unmute, raise your hand, and we'll get you going that way. As you think of those questions, I also see previous participants on the call this morning. So if you're on the call and wanting to share a previous experience with the Healthy Soil Program, share a past project with us, we'd invite you to do that as well. So again, looking for a raised hand, we'll invite you to unmute at that point. So we'll give it a beat here. And as we wait on those questions and comments, I'll go grab links just for anyone who might not have grabbed a QR code earlier.
Steve Glass has a question or a raised hand.
I do. I would like to just share our previous experience at Ciudad Soil and Water with the Healthy Soils program, and we have really had a wonderful time with the Healthy Soils program as an eligible entity with specifically with our Candelaria Nature Preserve project, where we're converting, and we got a little video done thanks to NMDA that is actually posted on the website. I saw it there. And I would just encourage all of you eligible entities to apply for this. I mean, it's a little bit of work, as we've learned today, but it's totally worth it because the funding is just great, and you can get such great conservation on the ground with these funds. And I do want to congratulate or give kudos to Dean and Katie for yet again improving the whole process of applying. It gets better and clearer and easier every year. So you can count on seeing an application from CDOT again, and I hope a bunch of you other eligible entities take advantage of this incredible opportunity.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. We appreciate that. And I will mention again one more time if your eligible entity needs any technical assistance, one-on-one technical assistance for project development, please shoot us an email at that hsp@nmda.nmsu.edu, or give us a call, and I'd be happy to help you with some of the technical questions that you might have in project development.
I'm dropping a few things in the chat there. Our homepage to the Healthy Soil Program. Again, that's where people can sign up for those weekly emails. The other thing I've posted there is the webpage specific to eligible entities. So every little thing you would need to apply for our grants lives on that page, requirements for eligible entities. Pamela asked the best phone number to call. So I guess it depends on the type of question. I'll put our general line there. That's our office line. And Dean, you're welcome to chime in further if you like. Anything else we ought to be posting here, Dean, that would be useful in the chat? We've got the HSP homepage and that step-by-step application project process unique to eligible entities.
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, you have the email, the HSP email, and our main phone number, and everything gets distributed to the appropriate person. And so, reach out to us if you have questions, and we'll definitely be willing to help you.
Any final comments, Dean, as we wrap up? It seems that all the questions have been addressed, and people know that they can email us beyond today and call us beyond today, right up to the application deadline for further guidance. We've got all the resources on our website. So closing comments from you, Dean?
I just want to thank you for your time this morning, and also your interest in the Healthy Soil program. And we hope that you're able to put in an application for the Healthy Soil program and improve the soil within your eligible entity. But again, I just thank you for your time this morning.
I'll echo that gratitude. I also recognize that because we have some, if we have tribal members on the call today and members from our soil and water conservation districts, of course, those are the parties that separately can sponsor projects that are submitted by individual applicants. So we've got another webinar today happening just for those individual business, nonprofit applicant types. And I'll provide that in the chat as well. A link to their page in case you were interested in that on an individual basis or wanted to serve as a project sponsor for those individuals on behalf of your district or on behalf of your tribal nation. So we thank you very much to Echo Dean for participating in today's webinar. Thank you for the good questions. We hope you'll be in touch, and we certainly hope you'll make application to NMDA's Healthy Soil Program grants. Thanks, everybody.